Hi, and welcome back to our video series of Self Off the Shelf. So this is our second video, our second week of this series, and I hope that you were able to really take a few moments every day over this past week to really just stop and give yourself that love and compassion, resetting that intention, making that decision again, that you were going to connect within and allow this season to flow, because that's really where a lot of this comes in. It's just letting things kind of be taken over by the universe a little bit, allowing some flow through all of this so that it becomes fun and joyful and light and in flow, right? Like that's what this is about. But this week, I'm actually going to give you a few tools to actually free yourself from some of those heavier thoughts or heavier beliefs that kind of keep you in that space of shoulds. The shoulds of making sure that you cook the same thing every year, or the shoulds of making sure that you have the same decorations every year, or the shoulds of making sure that you get those cards out on time. Okay, so it's an amazing thing, actually, when you start to let go of some of these things and when you actually observe your beliefs of different things. And actually, I'm going to tell you a little story about that, actually. I think the most profound time where I realized it was time that I re-examined what I really thought and what was really important to me was over the conversation of Christmas decorations. So I was raised in a house where everything was taken care of and our Christmas decorations were continually the same. It was a deep, treasured thing that we had these Christmas decorations. And I could still tell you that if I was at my parents' house on Christmas now, I would still be putting out my beloved angels. And quite frankly, I would probably feel a little possessive about being the one that put out these angels. It was a bit of a family tradition that we all had these decorations. And this was passed down like from, decorations that we had from, my mom had from like years ago before I was born. This was the theme. And when we first started having children and our daughters were born, I remember being really excited at the idea of gathering up our own version of this tradition. And it became a thing where we started gathering up these different ornaments and different things, and I loved doing it. And then it came a thing of taking care of them. And it became a thing of this stress of we moved from England, we moved to Canada, and then we would move from Canada to England. And it was always this thing, what's happened with the Christmas decorations? What's happened with the Christmas decorations? It became this weight. We should have these. And it went from a space of joy of the collecting to the shoulds of passing them down. And it lasted quite a few years, actually, where I would feel this guilt of if one got wrecked, or if something wasn't, something got knocked off the shelf. I feel this strange guilt that it wasn't being maintained for my family to grow with. And we had all of these little ones that just were really finicky. So if you knocked them, little pieces would fall off and things. And we had young kids running around. We had pets running around. We had a chaotic house full of joy and full of laughter. And I found myself actually getting irritated if these ornaments were at risk. And I slowly learned to let that go. And they would get wrecked. And then I would be upset. But I'd kind of, oh, that's okay. And then my daughters turned to teenagers. And one year they were about to set up the tree, and they came to me and they said, we have a favor to ask. Can we have an aesthetic tree this year? And I looked confused and I said, we don't really like our ornaments, Mom. Could we maybe go to Walmart and go and pick out a new tree and pick out the ornaments, and we could all do it together? And they looked so excited at the idea of building this Instagram-worthy aesthetic tree. And even my son, who was younger, was like, oh yeah, that'd be so pretty. Let's do that. And let's get really sparkly lights and let's do this. They looked so excited. And they will still tell you that that was one of their favorite Christmases, was when I said, yep, let's do it. Go for it. We put the Christmas ornaments aside. They're in a box somewhere back in Canada. I don't know where. And yeah, a lot of them were wrecked. And in that moment, I released all that guilt, because I thought, this is not what this is about. It might have worked for my parents. Hey, it might have worked for other people. But for our personal story, this was a should that needed to be released. And like I said, that might not be true for you. You could totally feel joy every single time you pull out all the things. But this is where part of this comes in. Listening to that inner guidance, listening to your truest self, deciding to love yourself enough to not take on the other shoulds. Okay, so this video might be a little bit longer, not just because of stories, but I have an important thing for you to explore for a minute. So shoulds. Shoulds are really interesting. They usually lead to guilt. And there are a number of different sources that this comes from, and only one important one to listen to. So in this moment, in this video, and throughout this week, I'm going to be encouraging you to start examining where these shoulds come from and letting go of the ones that are not important. So I always like to say that shoulds come from 3 different sources. Your first one is, like I talked about, it comes from family, it comes from upbringing, it comes from the conversations where, it's like, what, you're not doing that? That's always a good sentence. And I swear, there's nothing wrong when people say this, because quite frankly, nobody really knows that they're doing it. Chances are, I watch myself do this as well. I can easily imagine that I'll be telling my children when they get older, if I start doing that, please tell me not to. We all can fall into this. So no one has done any harm at the idea of doing this, but it's really important to acknowledge if it's happened to you. So what are your guilts or shoulds that are coming from your upbringing, from your family, from your mother, father, grandparents, aunts, uncles, all of that? What are your shoulds? Guess what? They're not yours. Okay, next, the other shoulds. It comes from society. It comes from the fact that if you decide, I'm not doing any holidays this year, you're seen as a Scrooge. What does that even mean? Like, where does this come from? If you don't feel like it's aligned to you to put up a tree this year, good for you. Don't do it. So, acknowledge what's coming from society. What's not yours? What are you being imposed with? And let go. And then there's the third one, which shouldn't even be called a should, because it's just your own inner calling. It's the time when you go, you know what? I actually just really want to take some of these fantastic things and run them over next door to my neighbor. I just feel called to do that. Or it's hey, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to go into the cupboard and I'm going to grab one of the things that are saving for like December 25th and I'm going to give it to the kids now because you know what? They're feeling kind of antsy. So let's do that. It's allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to listen to those callings, even though they might not make sense, or they actually might go against what you're being told from society or from family tradition or what everybody has given this little compact box version of what you're supposed to do. It's all gone. Okay. So I want you to just simply, you can journal this out. You can just ponder it while you're stuck in traffic. Just explore. And even actually, if all of a sudden you get a wave of guilt or a wave of a should, just ask, where's this coming from? And just explore. Again, a little bit better every day, same as last week. Okay, so that's your shoulds. And you're going to find that a lot of it does come from family. A lot of it does come from people in your lives. And you might find that this is the time of year, I would probably say actually this year more than others, that people are bumping up against each other all the time. So be it friends, be it families, be it distant relatives, be it social media buddies, all of it, there's a bit extra tension. So I want to drop in a little image for you. You have your own world. You have your own frequency, your own interpretation of things. You have your own vibration. You have your own spiritual perspective. And that's your perspective. And you might find that there's a lot of people who have, a lot of people will find their perspective, and they might not understand yours. So it's like everyone lives on different worlds. I usually, when I work with a client, will talk about different discs. It's like you have a disc that the more you spend in the energy of yourself and in your life, it will just build momentum, and that's what you live. And if you want to change it, you've got to find that different frequency, that different disc, which is what I coach with. And that's what I help people with. But in this life, this is what you do. You create your perspective, your energy, your world. And other people create their world and their perspective and their disc. And often those don't mix. So you look over at their world and you're like, I don't get it. Why are they doing that? I don't understand. And other people will look over at yours and go, yeah, I have no idea what they're doing. I have no idea what they're talking about. Why are they not doing that? And often, what's fascinating is that each person in their own disc, it all makes sense. It all makes sense to them. This makes total sense. But from the other side, it's a bit like looking through a cloudy window. They just don't understand. So one of the things to let go is other people's opinions. It's really, really important to release other people's opinions about you and about what your family's doing. You have to trust that you know your heart and you're doing what feels best to you. And of course, that means also like working with your partner, working with your children. That creates that world, that disc. So in that, though, you have to then let other people have their own perspective. Now, often in holidays, everyone's bounding up against each other, right? And it's like this whole thing where everyone's supposed to get along and it's all supposed to be happy and it's all supposed to be... And then it usually will end up in some sort of conflict or ruffled feelings or hurt feelings or yuck. So I want to encourage you as you start to tiptoe into this, as this season is really edging into that, and actually start two things. First of all, acknowledging the different perspective. Just acknowledge the different perspective. It's like, okay, well, and then you can introduce the things of two sentences, depending on the situation. One, they just don't get it, and that's okay. They just don't get it, and that's okay. They just don't get us, and that's okay. Maybe I don't get them, and that's okay. It's okay that we don't see eye to eye. It's okay. And then you can also introduce, which is an open space for your heart, is just if there's any nastiness or if there's any tension, just tell yourself they don't know any better. They just don't know that they're doing it. It's just not, none of it's intentional. Just create that gap. And you might find that's not really standing up for myself. And you go, you know what, actually it is. Because when you do that, you create a bubble of energy. You're creating a boundary, a gap, where their world is their world and your world is your world and your world is safe. You do your thing. And other people's opinions is none of your business. Now, sometimes you might find a ruffle of emotion that when you get back to home and you just keep replaying those conversations over and over and over in your head, or you just keep thinking about someone, that means that energy has really gotten clicked together. And I'm not going to go too far into this, but just be aware that there's that energy linked. So a process that I usually offer my clients, which is a very, very powerful process, is the Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian prayer practice. And simply put, it is 4 sentences that you can repeat when you consider any individual person that you feel linked to. Little signs that you feel linked to them. Well, there's always replaying those conversations. There's always thinking about the things that you should have said. There's always feeling like you can't quite shake the feeling of a situation. And so the 4 sentences simply are, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I thank you, and I love you. Now, sometimes the please forgive me triggers people up a bit. And so I often encourage people to say, I'm sorry, I release you, I thank you, and I love you. And when you say I love you, you simply surround them in love and light, holding space for their own world, wishing them well, highest good of all. It's important to realize that energy does link. Energy gets connected and mingled around with people, and that's okay. It's okay. It's just part of being a spiritual being. We just float together and we bump up against each other, and sometimes energy hooks together. And so it's important to love yourself enough to claim yourself back, to claim the energy that's you back to you, and let other people's energy flow back to them. Don't keep thinking about it. Surround them in love and light. Let it go. Okay, so these are a few tools that you can use to let go of what's holding you in the old places of where you've been. So you are looking at letting go of the shoulds. They got to go. There is no, unless it's flowing from you and what you desire for you and your family, it can go. There's no reason why you have to make the same pumpkin pie every year. It's okay if you do something else. If you feel called to make a chocolate cake this year, do it. If you feel called to go to the shop and bring an ice cream, that's fine too. So release the shoulds, release the shoulds, release the shoulds. And at the same time, listen for those deep inner callings, because I promise you this, those are going to be the ones that bring you so much satisfaction and so much joy. And also, those are going to be the ones that when you follow through with them, you're going to feel so much relief, and you're going to find that things just go lining up in this phenomenal way. So you're going to just find that they just line up beautifully. Then also, releasing other people from their opinions. Their world, your world. Take care of you and your family. You and your home. Take care of your grounded self. And just shower everyone else with love. Just surround them in love. Love, and compassion. It's been a really hard year for everyone on the planet. It's been a hard 2 years for everyone on the planet. So surround them in love and healing. Most people are in a traumatic response right now anyway. All right, so again, over in the Facebook group, the Spiritually Aware Parenting Community, you are going to find prompts that are going to help you remember all of these. If you don't feel like going on social media, keep those Post-its going. Put a reminder on your phone, something to make sure that you're connecting to yourself. Let these thoughts ruminate. Again, always remembering, a little bit better every day. There's no pressure in this. There's no failure in this. Just a little bit better every day. Surround yourself and others in love. And by all means, if you have any questions, you can always hit reply to the email that this is in, or if you're seeing this elsewhere, you can always just send me a message over at Christina at Spiritually Aware Parenting, and I'm happy to respond to any of your questions or take care of anything that you need. So, feel free to enjoy your experience this holiday season. Love and light, everyone, and I look forward to touching base and seeing you again next week. Bye now.